Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, I'm John in Brooklyn. You're listening to Locks of the Week Radio, the only show that will let me on the air.
Coast to coast, internet sports talk, Locks of the Week.
Doc Rivers continues to time and time again not get it when it comes to getting. Oh! Let him play!
Yeah, everybody have a show today. We had snow today, show today, show tomorrow.
I don't know if you want that on your credit card bill. You know, saying the WC network on it. I mean, like, your dad could look at it and be like, Dave, you have something to tell me?
That's the story that they still.
It's unbelievable.
You have your LeBron in the play. It's like, do you really care about the James Jones at the end of the bench and the potatoes?
Maybe the board, the MikeFrancesa.com, was just ahead of its time.
Pioneers.
Exactly, yeah.
Pioneers, if you will. Yeah.
We listen to this guy sit at a desk and picking his teeth every day and all the dumb stuff he does. But it's not like we're changing the dial. We like Mike. You know, we hate Mike, we love Mike, all that back and forth.
Bingo.
Unbelievable.
San Antonio Spurs, Dave. What do they say about them?
They're boring. They're
boring!
From Los Angeles, this is Dave in the City, brought to you by Locks of the Week Radio. Now, here's Dave Medina.
Good evening, sports fans! I just need, welcome to the College Football Preview Podcast for 2014. Here in the city, a moment we've all been waiting for. Welcome aboard. Hope you're having a good time tonight. I'm Dave Medina, as noted in the intro, and we are ready to talk college football with all of you tonight. And to do such a thing, we require a lot of preparation work. The information comes to us largely from Athlon Sports, and we would thank them for providing the details and the team previews in their great college football magazine. And some other various sources have compiled the other information that all of us will be using for this program. Joining us tonight in this special show, John in Connecticut and Ron in New Jersey. And coming up at 11:30, so not exactly 11 o'clock, we'll have Kevin on the Cape, hopefully, for random questions tonight. So we got to get it started. There's a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests. We begin with the man who knows football more than any other. Actually, a lot of people know. There isn't certainly any just one guy. But the first person is someone who you just heard from a couple of days ago, and that is John in Connecticut. John, welcome back to the show after a 2-day absence. How you doing tonight?
Dave, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again, and I appreciate the compliments. I wouldn't say that I know more about football than anyone else, so that's going a little bit too far. I certainly retain a lot of information. That's how I would put it. And okay. I can speak eloquently on the topic, but thank you for the compliment, and I think I'd say it every year, but I could not be more excited for college football season, and it should be fun tonight. I can't wait to get to all the stuff here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we're going to try to cover all the big conferences tonight, and to help us with that, we also have Ron in New Jersey, who also knows quite a lot of football in his own right. He's tremendous, especially with draft prospects. Ron, welcome to the program. This is a thrill to have you back on the program. How's it going tonight?
What's going on, Dave and John?
Doing good.
Good.
Great to hear from you, Ron. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. What is this, our third or fourth year doing this? I mean, we need like our own theme music or something.
I like the idea.
It can be Sting's entrance music or something, right?
Yeah.
Sting's entrance.
You got to try to sell this to like the Pac-10 network or something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm into it. I think our podcast tonight's going to be seen by more people than the Pac-12, and that's what you just said, but
that's true.
It wouldn't be that. It's not an exaggeration, honestly. So on this great night, we should start with the season storylines, and the biggest one is obvious: the college football playoff system. This is something that is really long overdue, and it's quite a system. So let's go ahead and break some of these details down. And so John, now let's start with you. First of all, there are 6 bowls that will be involved in the playoff, and they are going to be called the New Year's Six. 2 of the 6 bowls will be used for the semifinal games, and the semifinal games usually will get played New Year's Eve with no other games scheduled that day. This year it'll be a little different. They have to do it on New Year's Day because of the Rose Bowl's insistence on doing their game on January 1st. That's fine. That's no big deal. And so there's a lot to it. Tell us a little bit about the particulars of this new college football playoff.
All right, I'll explain it in layman terms because it is kind of complicated when you try to hear it from the first time. As you said, Dave, the semifinals are rotated among 6 major bowls: the Rose, the Sugar, the Fiesta, the Orange, the Cotton, and the Chick-fil-A. 3 will be played on New Year's Eve, 2 will be played on New Year's Day. Every year, college football is kind of taking back that spot. They really wanted to, how college football for years was all about New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Captivating, America with their games. And they're going to be doing that again. There's going to be obviously 4 teams in the playoff for now, and it's locked in for like 18 years, I think. Each bowl will have a chance to host a semifinal 3 times. So we're going to be stuck at 4 teams for a while here unless something really crazy happens. Obviously, the winners of the semifinal games will be played the championship game a week later on a neutral site field bid on by cities across America. This year, Dallas is hosting the game. I think Tampa and Arizona are up in the coming years, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We're not hosting the semifinal games. Obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4. The bowls have their contracts, like the Rose Bowl, obviously the Big Ten, Pac-12. Sugar Bowl has the SEC and Big 12. Orange Bowl has the ACC, and I believe the Big 10, number 2, or something like that. Notre Dame's in the mix too. And all the other spots are filled by the selection committee. This committee is similar to the men's basketball committee that fills the NCAA tournament every year. It has 13 members. All of them are highly respected athletic directors and coaches. And then you have Condoleezza Rice on the panel. Why she's there, I'll never know. But we can talk about the committee after. There's obviously 4 spots, which is interesting because there's 5 power conferences. This is completely subjective, so if you're going by the notion that they're going to select 4 champions for this thing, one conference is going to get left out. Yeah. Even in a year where the SEC just has an unbelievable season and they get 2 teams, well, then there's 2 conference champions that are going to go left out. So I think it's completely subjective. They said their criteria is like head-to-head, strength of schedule, conference titles, all this mumbo-jumbo, but there's no more computers. I mean, they wanted to get rid of BCS, well, they got rid of it. Now you got Condoleezza Rice picking who's playing for the national title. So, and the last interesting thing about this is it does help the little guy, I think, because there is one guaranteed spot for the so-called Group of 5 conferences, and that's the AAC, the MAC, the Sun Belt, Conference USA, and the Mountain West. The highest, I thought it was the highest ranked, but since the committee does the rankings, I mean, it's completely subjective once again. Not necessarily what the media has. So the media could have, for example, this year, we'll probably talk about it later, like Marshall's probably going to go 12-0, but they play no one. So would the committee select a 10-2 Houston or UCF from a stronger league, the American, over Marshall for that bid? So that'll be interesting to follow. So there's tons of stuff going on here, and I can't wait to see what this committee comes up with. They'll be starting their rankings, I believe, in the middle of October, and they'll be releasing them on Tuesday night. So there you go. There's your kind of particulars of how the playoff works, if you followed all that, and it should be exciting.
Yeah, and I think the bottom line is we get 4 teams that will get to go against each other. It opens the door for other teams to make it in, and if you have a letdown game in the middle of the season, you have a chance to recover from that letdown game for this playoff. It's a big deal. It's a big story, and so it really does even the playing field on certain levels. So, Ron, I wanted your thoughts on this too. And I had another question regarding that, by the way. One of the ADs represented, because some of the ADs on here are current ADs. Like, Pat Hayden's an active athletic director, and I thought, is that going to be a conflict of interest if, say, USC gets involved in this playoff? So that's something I'm a little worried about. But, Ron, first, let's get your thoughts on the new college football playoff.
Well, I love it. I think it's it's the next step in the evolution of college football. And we always heard that there would never be a playoff. There's never going to be a playoff. Well, we have a playoff now, and I definitely I like the way it's played out with the, like John said, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Growing up, being a college football fan, I mean, those were the 2 days where you could sit in front of your TV and see all the big games. And in the past, I guess, 10, 15 years or so, it's changed to where, I mean, you got the BCS Bowls 4 or 5 days after January 1st, and I think it took away a little bit of the luster of the New Year's Day Bowls, and I think the playoff really puts the emphasis back on that point in time for college football, and I really like it. The interesting thing, I think, is I don't think there's any limit to the number of teams from a conference that can get in. So
exactly.
Yeah, so you could, I mean, if ESPN had it up to them, I mean, you might see 4 SEC teams playing in that Final Four, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But it eliminates, like, a couple of years ago when we had Alabama and LSU playing for the national title, and it was kind of a letdown for everybody because you just saw it a few weeks before. In this new system, you probably would have had them split into just 2 different bowls in the semifinal bowls, and even if they won and played each other again, at least you had that knowledge that, hey, listen, they played the semifinal games, they won, they're the 2 best teams, you know, you can't really complain about it. So I think that is a big improvement of what we've had in the past. So I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I think as you know, you do bring up a great point. I was actually looking for what the statute of limitations on number of teams from a conference, and there is none. There really could be like 4 teams from the SEC going to the playoff. That's crazy. And one other area where I think someone could get hosed with this, with only 4 spots, and the fact that you don't have a limit on a conference, teams from a conference, is like the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 is so deep. I mean, the team might just come out of there with only like 10 or 11 wins, and they may be out of the playoff altogether. So that would be crazy. But that is also a fairly far-fetched idea. John, your thoughts about the limit of teams from each conference with this playoff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. You know, if there's 2, like Alabama and LSU from a couple of years ago, they obviously were 2 of the best sports teams in the country, so I don't think anyone would have complained if it's a scenario like that. I don't think you can complain at all. And actually, the point you bring up, Dave, about the Pac-12 being so strong, I think it actually helps them if, say, you know, Oregon or UCLA is 11-2, and the conference is so deep, they're more likely to get a spot than, say, Ohio State, who just beats up on everyone in the Big Ten, and, you know, the conference isn't that strong, just for an example. So I think with the 4-team playoff, it can almost help you in that situation, especially if they're really emphasizing strength of schedule, which it seems like they are. So we'll see how it plays out.
And I think that's good. It's one thing about this college football playoff that I'm hoping for as a residual effect, and that is this. Non-conference scheduling will be a lot better. I am getting so sick of teams scheduling FCS opponents in the beginning of the year. I mean, there's no reason to do that, especially if you're a really good team. I'm hoping that it will improve that area in the non-conference scheduling. Ron, do you think that this could have an effect on scheduling for future college football seasons?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you're seeing it already. I know that there's been a couple of series that have already been put into place. I can't think off the top of my head, but there's definitely been a change as far as future scheduling goes, where the teams at the top of the Big 5 conferences are starting to. I think they're going to move away from those FCS teams and start scheduling more marquee matchups. And I know it's all a money grab. I mean, that's why you had teams like around here, Rutgers, who they'll schedule Howard or something like that every year, and that one game can make Howard's profit for the season. But yeah, I think this new system is probably going to be the death of those gimme games that all the power conference teams schedule. Now, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think the level of competition is going to rise, and I think it's kind of what college football fans needed to get us through those first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, where you might only have 1 or 2 marquee games, and the rest are Florida against UT Chattanooga, something like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be better for everybody.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean that's certainly the logical thought, and I'm glad. I'm hopeful for that too. I really am. So, John, anything to add as far as the effect of the college football playoff on scheduling?
Yeah, and Ron is absolutely right. We had actually one of your teams, Dave, your team, USC, scheduled a series with Alabama, so that was one of the big series to come out of this. So we're already definitely seeing a change in non-conference scheduling.
Hey, that's an interesting subtext because Lane Kiffin is actually now an offensive coordinator with Bama. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I could see. We'll probably talk about it in a minute, but I could see all the hate mail and all the talk radio. The Paul Feinbaum show will be writing up calls from both seats in Alabama, talking about the play calling this year.
Oh, I can imagine. Phyllis will be off the
Paul
chain.
Paul Feinbaum might end up killing Lane Kiffin before the season's over.
I wouldn't
personally.
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me. That would be crazy. Oh man, Feinbaum show is going to be amazing this year, just from all those games. Well, it'll be an exciting SEC preview when we get to it. All right, guys. So that was just one of our season storylines. A couple other minor topics to bring up before we get into our team previews. First, the changes in the college broadcast, and this is a big story for me, and I'm sure it is for John and Ron too, because Brent Musburger no longer the lead announcer for college football telecasts on ESPN. That is a sad story to me. He still had gas left in the tank, but ESPN decided with the contract soon to expire, they wanted to go in a different direction. So Chris Fowler will get the promotion to that spot, although he'll continue doing college game day in the morning, and he'll join Herbie for the play-by-play. But still, Musburger was an icon for so many years doing just the college games, and that was the tail end of what has already been a great career for him all over, CBS and ABC and ESPN. It's just it's going to be a new era, and I'm going to miss him. So that's pretty much my thought on it. Your thoughts on Brent Musburger? We'll start with John.
Yeah, I mean, even in his advanced age, I mean, he was still sharp as a whip, getting his gambling references in, hitting on women in the crowd. I mean, he was a treat.
Oh, yeah.
So they're definitely going to miss him.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to miss him here, but, I mean, I guess time has come for everyone to kind of, everyone's time comes, I guess, to kind of move on, and Fowler is certainly a professional. He's been doing game day for years. He dabbles here and there with games. I think he's did some bowl games. I think he's doing Thursday night games, too, if I recall correctly.
I remember this, yeah.
He'll be certainly, he'll certainly do a good job, and I don't think it'll be that much big of a difference, and we'll just have to get used to it, and by the end of the season, it won't even be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll manage all right. I mean, I remember when Brent Musburger took over the spot from Keith Jackson, and people were like, "Wow, what's it going to be like without Keith Jackson calling these big games?" And so it's an evolution, and I think they've certainly selected the right guy for the task, and it should be. I think we'll be all right with it. I mean, as you know, Herbie and Chris Fowler already have a pretty good chemistry on college game day, so I imagine that will just carry over to the broadcast booth. All right, Ron, your thoughts about the dawning of a new era in lead college football announcing?
Yeah, I'm a Fowler fan, so I actually like the move. But you made a good point, Dave. I mean, if you think about 15 years ago, if someone told you, you're not going to be able to listen to Keith Jackson call, primetime college football games, you would think, well, that sucks. What am I going to do? But, Musburger came in and, you survived and you turned out to enjoy his calls. And I think it's going to be the same with Fowler taking over. I think they found the right guy instead of trying to pull someone from outside of their network to come in. I think they did the right thing. I think there's a chemistry there, and I think he's going to do a good job.
And that's great news for Chris Fowler, too. I mean, he's really been a lifer at ESPN. He's been there a really long time. He may be one of the longest tenured guys at the network, and he's been doing game day since 1990. So it's a long time coming, and I'm happy for him, too. Interesting thought. It's going to eventually be time for Vern Lundquist to go, too, one way or another, and he's been doing the SEC on CBS Granted, we've only been doing those games since like 2000. Like he hadn't been doing that particular assignment for as long as it seems, but he's certainly been doing it for a while. And now the question is, who would replace him? At the moment, all we have as far as replacements is Ali LaForce taking over the sideline reporter duties from Tracy Wolfson, which is a significant upgrade in my opinion. She'll be great, and she's actually pretty good. That's the other half of it. Like she's actually good at sideline reporting. So, wow, what to make of the SEC and CBS? John, let's get your thoughts first.
Yeah, I think Wolfson's going to do the NFL now. I think she might go into the Thursday night games that they got, but yeah, I mean Vern he's like your old crazy uncle, but he can call a good college football game. I like him. I'm not a fan of Danielson. I know he goes on with Mike, and Mike talks over him. Mike's such a jerk, a bully, whatever. But he just strikes me as a kind of a douche. I don't know, but we'll see. As for anyone who can replace him at CBS, who knows? I mean, they got most of their talent is wrapped up in the NFL, so
right.
We'll see who can replace Vernon and do the NFL too. I don't think that would work out.
You're going to have to get a guy from the outside. That's kind of sort of what I'm thinking of. And I can't even think of who they would select. Like, I mean, the best I could come up with is maybe they would go after Brad Nessler or something like that. But I mean, that's not much of a leap, honestly. I mean, I like Nessler all right. I just think that is he the guy that you can think of as the premier voice of SEC football? Well, he does it already for ESPN at 7 o'clock Eastern on Saturday night, but I don't know. That's an interesting thought. We'll just have to think about that one later. Ron, any further thought about Vern and Dan? I do have an opinion of Danielson. I think Danielson's a bit of a know-it-all too. Like he talks a lot. He reminds me of Mike Mayock that way. But anyway, your thoughts on the SEC on CBS crew, Ron?
Yeah, I agree. I think Danielson gets in the way of the broadcast a little bit with his. You're right. He comes off like a know-it-all, but yeah, I agree. I like Burns. If and when he does retire, I think they should try and go and grab somebody like an Ian Eagle, who I think is one of the most underrated announcers across all the sports, and he does a really good job with the NFL. So he's already a CBS guy, and they keep him buried in the worst games with the NFL. Why not move him to the SEC and see if he can grow a fan base there? I think he would be perfect for that job.
That would have, it's really unfortunate too. He deserves better than those assignments. He gets like every Raiders and Chargers game. I always see him doing the Charger games somewhere with Dan Fouts on CBS. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. If Gus Johnson was still on the network, I think that would have been an easier decision. Like, he would be the guy. Imagine him doing SEC games. That would be way fun. But, alas, it's not to be. All right, guys.
He might have had a heart attack on that Alabama-Auburn game. Literally.
No question. Oh, boy. But yeah, it'll be a good year, though, for CBS again. Boy, it's amazing how much of a tradition this has become. But again, they didn't really start doing SEC games exclusively until about 15 years ago. It just seems like it's been around for like 30 years, but it's only been around for like 15. CBS has been doing college football forever, but they've done different teams in the past. So, I mean, that's an interesting thought. The SEC, it really has grown a lot since maybe I turned 18, which is about, at this point we're kind of looking at 15 years ago. It's a bit at a crossroads right now. John, I just wondered what you thought about the SEC in transition. It's still a very good conference, but I wonder, is it the monolith that it used to be? What do you think?
I think it's still pretty good. I don't think it's as dominant as it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago. And that's when the SEC homers, they were legit with their claims of it being, way better than all the other conferences, SEC. I think the Pac-12 has really closed the gap. If you look top to bottom, I think the Pac-12 matches up just as well with the SEC. That's not to say that there's not good teams. The top of the SEC is really good, but so is the top of the Pac-12. So, while it's still really, really good, I don't think it's the clear-cut best league in the country, top to bottom, anymore. So that would be my answer to is the SEC still dominant.
I would side with you on that, and I would take that. What I would also say is that Pac-12 is at minimum even with the SEC. I even think the Pac-12 might be better because you have more teams that are tough to beat in there than the SEC. I mean, there's more field in the SEC than people realize. Like you're talking about some pretty bad teams at the bottom, like Kentucky, teams like that. It's really good at the top, amazing, but the bottom end is not so great. The Pac-12 is a little better in that arena, although they still have some clunkers like Cal and Colorado and Washington State. So anyway, Ron, your thoughts about the SEC? Is it still? It's still a good conference, but do you think that it is the end-all, be-all for dominant conferences at this point?
I'm actually with you guys. I think the Pac-12 is, if not better, than right there, top to bottom. But I think it's a weird year for the SEC this year because you have a lot of teams in transition, like the Alabamas, the LSUs. Florida is still in transition. Tennessee is still trying to come back. Texas A&M, you're talking about, losing Johnny Manziel. But if you look at the recruiting rankings, and I know that, in the end that means nothing, but I mean, the SEC fills the top 20. Alabama still recruits like an NFL team. So, I would wait a year or two, and you're going to see LSU and Alabama right back up at the top and probably two of the best teams in the country again, and then, people are going to rally for the SEC and, pump their fists. So I think it might just be down a little bit this year, but they're definitely not going anywhere.
I don't think they're going anywhere ultimately. Perhaps it's just not as it's not as clear cut as we've seen in the years beforehand. This is Ron in New Jersey. You just heard from. We're also with John in Connecticut tonight. I'm Dave Medina, and we are doing the College Football Preview Show. We'll be covering college football for the next hour, and we will then transition to random questions at 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific. So, without further ado, we begin our conference previews, and we start with a look at the team that's defending the title, Florida State. Doesn't really look like they have any real signs of slowing down. Jameis Winston is back. Their defense still should be pretty solid despite losing some starters. Same idea for offense. They've lost some of their best offensive players. But it's still going to be the team to beat in that conference. And then there's a whole lot of other storylines to follow. So let's start with John. You look at the ACC. Who are the teams to beat?
Yeah, Florida State, the clear and unquestioned favorite, not only in the ACC, but I think nationally. They did lose some key pieces, but Jimbo Fisher has done such an unbelievable job of recruiting. I mean, they're just going to bring these guys in waves. I mean, it's the old saying, you don't rebuild, you reload. Well, that's exactly what Florida State's doing. As long as they have Jameis Winston, they still have some receivers that he can throw to. I know they lost Kelvin Benjamin when he got drafted by the Panthers, but they'll be fine there. They got their tight end, O'Leary, who's probably the best in the country. And there's not really a game on their schedule that I can look at and say, man, well, that's going to be a tough one. The hardest game probably on their schedule that I think they could have a chance of losing is at Louisville on a Thursday night, who is the new addition to the conference. But other than that, I mean, they're going to sweep through these guys. They play Clemson at home, and they play at Miami. It's probably their second toughest game. So they're going to go 12-0, and as long as they get through that Louisville game, who, like I said, is probably the second best team in that division. Although Clemson is right there with them. I'd say it's 2 and 3. You can go either or. Clemson obviously loses Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, so they're going to rely on their defense this year, which is interesting. Whereas the last couple of years they just had an unbelievable offense. So I'll say FSU is going to obviously win the Atlantic. Clemson and Louisville will be a close second and third. The rest of those teams we don't need to bother on. Now the other division in the ACC, the Coastal, is really interesting because you could make a legit case for 5 or 6 of these teams winning it. In fact, if Louisville had been put in this division instead of the Atlantic, I'd pick them to win going away. I think they're the second best team in the conference. But alas, they're not. So we got to pick a team here. I think it'll come down. A lot of the preview magazines I've seen have been taking hit to finish high, which I completely don't see at all. They have some nice young players, but I mean their coach is as boring can be. I can't see that guy Paul Chryst. I just can't see them doing anything. Georgia Tech is mediocre every single year, despite what anyone says. I think that option game is kind of losing its luster. Miami has horrible quarterback issues. They might start Jake Heaps, who's been, I think he's played for about every Division I team at this point. Virginia, it's huge. Virginia Tech's got a horrible offense, so I don't know what they're doing. They're clearly regressing. Although their defense should be pretty good. So the Coastal, in short, comes down to UNC and Duke, which is kind of funny because it's usually the basketball rivalry. Well, here it is on the football field. And I'd love to say Duke repeats, but I just think UNC's got a loaded team this year. They go away from two quarterback situations they had last year. Their quarterback, I believe his name is Marquise Williams, is the unquestioned starter. Including their one guy, Ryan Switzer, who's a punt returner. He set the NCAA record for punt returns last year. So punt return TDs. He's clearly a weapon, and I think they're just a little stronger than Duke on the offensive side. Duke loses one of their quarterbacks, Brandon Connett, transferred to Fresno. So they're in a little bit of a transition, but still, for Duke to even, for me to even be saying that Duke's a contender, to show you how far they've come. But in the end, I'll say FSU versus North Carolina in the ACC title game, and obviously FSU will win it and get a spot in the playoff. I think they're the only complete no-brainer team that they're going to. You can pencil them in now. I'd be shocked if they don't make it as one of the Final Four.
Yeah, there's way too much talent in Florida State. I mean, you saw it last year too. When you're that deep, especially in the ACC, I can't imagine that would be that they. I mean, once they get past Louisville, that there's going to be much in the way of an obstacle. But that's why they play the game. So we'll follow that out. Okay, Ron, your thoughts on the ACC. And I had a quick question about Duke, though, because I was thinking, as I think Checker alluded to this, but I'm not really sure what they're going to do with that quarterback. I don't think they like the guy that they had last year. So is that going to be a problem for them, that quarterback with the quarterback position? And their backup, Brandon Connett, he transferred out for personal reasons. The actual personal reason was because his mom has been diagnosed with cancer. And so he wanted to be closer to home, so he transferred over to Fresno State. So that just reduces an option for Duke at quarterback. So I don't really know how that's going to play out. So your thoughts on the ACC, and can Duke hold up the good season they had last year?
Yeah, I think they can at least repeat or come close to repeating their season that they had last year. And even if they fall a few games short, I mean, just the fact that we're talking about Duke being an impactful team in the ACC is something to behold, because, I mean, they were like on the level of a Rutgers or a Kentucky, in terms of an emphasis with football. So, yeah, I mean, just that they're in the discussion is a win in itself, in my opinion. But I think they'll be okay. I'm going to go checker on the checker. And, yeah, I think Florida State and North Carolina would be the title game. And it's clear to everybody. I think it's Florida State and then everybody else. Florida State, they almost remind me of an SEC team, like during, I don't want to say the heyday, but, a couple years ago when Alabama and LSU were constantly going back and forth on who was the best team. I mean, Florida State to me is built like one of those teams, and with Jimbo Fisher, I mean, it's no surprise, but I mean, they have just talent after talent. They lost a ton of guys, and they have guys who are stepping up now who most experts think are going to be better. So they're the clear choice there. I can't see them losing a game, and I think the interesting part for me is going to be to see how far Clemson goes, and when they eventually turn to their freshman quarterback, Deshaun Watson, because everything you read is that I think they're going to start a guy named Cole Stout.
Yep.
But Watson is the real deal. Freshman hot hands who's going to come in and electrify, and it's only going to be a matter of time before he takes over, and we'll see how far he can lead Clemson. I think they're going to end up being the second best team in the conference. I think Louisville's a great addition, but in the end, it's Florida State and a bunch of second-tier teams.
I also would say that Bobby Petrino will probably need another year or so to get the recruiting to the way he wants it. He's more of an offensive coach. The guy who left, Charlie Strong, is more of a defensive guy. So it'll take some time, I think, for them to get the personnel that fits him. But the guys he has now would still be good enough to make a nice run. I actually think there'd be reasonably good expectations for Louisville, as you both have said. So that's great. Anything else you wanted to add, John, regarding the ACC?
Yeah, I mean, Louisville, they're actually going to be, he has the perfect pieces this year to run his offense. I guess in the spring game, their quarterback, Will Gardner, he's a senior, they threw for like 5 or 6 touchdowns. I don't know what that says about their defense, but then they return all their receivers, all their running backs. The offensive line is solid, too, so they're going to put up a ton of points. But he actually Petrino actually walks into a very good situation to run his offense. I think it's the defense that they have to be concerned about this year. Really nothing else to add about the ACC. I mean, it's Florida State and it's everyone else. I mean, I know we're going to enjoy games between Boston College and Pitt and Syracuse on a Friday night. It boggles my mind why they're in the ACC and UConn's not. But hey, sour grapes, I guess.
Yeah. Oh man, those games are brutal sometimes. I tell you. I don't know. Maybe it's more of a basketball. I can't even say basketball. Basketball would further the argument that John has. Anyway, next conference that we have on our preview is the AAC, the former Big East, where UConn currently is with new head coach Bob Diaco, the former defensive coordinator of Notre Dame. So that's where we start. But the teams to beat in this conference look to be ECU and probably Cincinnati for sure, with Gunnar Kiel, who transferred from Notre Dame. Cincinnati probably would be the team to beat, but a lot of hype about ECU as well. So let's go run this down one by one. Ron, you first. How do you see the AAC? Who are the teams to beat?
Well, I know a lot of people like Cincinnati. I kind of like East Carolina a little bit better. Their quarterback Carter is he's the real deal. I think they have enough offense to survive the conference. The AAC, it almost seems like it's Conference USA from a couple of years ago, just with a different name,
Yeah.
But I think it's actually got a lot of potential to be at least a fun league to watch. I think UConn's moving in the right direction. I know that's John's team. I love the hire of Diaco. I think if enough things break right, I think they can make a bowl game. And I think he's going to energize that school. And I think that was a great hire. UCF is going to reload. It seems like they've been plucking talent from Florida, which has, arguably the best pool of high school players in the country. And they'll be back near the top. Cincinnati, like you said, with Gunnar Kiel, if he doesn't decide to transfer out before the start of the season, they'll probably be pretty good. And, besides that, you got Houston in the mix. The bottom of the conference is pretty terrible with Tulane, Temple, Tulsa, Memphis, SMU. They're all pretty hard, but it should be fun to see who rises to the top. I think it's going to be East Carolina, but it could be, like I said, either Cincinnati, UCF, and I don't think Connecticut is that far off either.
Well, I think there's a chance with UConn, and since John is close to the situation at Stores, we're interested to hear your thoughts about the UConn season. Is Diaco a good choice in your opinion?
Yeah, so far so good. He said all the right things. I just think there's just a different level of organization and just a process that he's just extremely professional and I guess organized, I guess I'd say is the right word, just completely 180 degrees different from the previous staff. So he's got things going in the right direction. We'll see what happens when he actually goes on the field. Their schedule isn't too hard, so I would be thrilled if they went 6-6. They actually have some good games at home this year. We're playing BYU and Boise State, UCF, Cincinnati, so it's going to be a fun season. Hopefully he can turn things around, but definitely not a conference contender this year, or maybe in a couple of years after he does some recruiting, but 6-6 in a bowl game would be nice. As for the rest of the conference, I actually think this is the best group of 5 league from top to bottom. I think there's 4 clear contenders here, and Ron mentioned them: UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and East Carolina. I'm actually going to go with UCF. They obviously lose Blake Bortles, and if he had come back, they would have been the no-brainer choice to win the conference again. But even without Bortles, their new quarterback, O'Leary just named him the other day, Keith DeNova. I'm not sure. I don't know much about him, but he's surrounded by a very good O-line, running backs. They got all the receivers back from last year, and they have the best defense in the conference. So you surround a new quarterback with those ingredients, certainly can't hurt. So I think they'll win the league. I think Houston is second. It'll be second. They return like 18 or 19 starters. Their quarterback, John O'Corn, he is really, really good. He's only a sophomore, so I'll watch out for him the next couple of years. They have a receiver, Deontay Greenberry, who's probably one of the best receivers that you probably never heard of. Shane Carden is very good, as Ron mentioned, from East Carolina. So I'd probably pick them third. And then Cincinnati, I just don't like, I don't know why. I'm just not a fan of Tommy Tuberville. I just think that was just so strange, him going from Texas Tech to Cincinnati. They really didn't beat anybody of substance last year. They got a pretty easy schedule again, but they'll go contend, but I'm just not a big fan of his. So I think UCF will win the conference, followed closely by Houston and East Carolina, and then Cincinnati in fourth. And then there's clearly a drop from the rest of the teams, 5 to 11, which really could go in any direction. So it'll be an interesting year, and for all my gripes about UConn not being in one of the major conferences, and I certainly would like them to be, it's not as bad as I thought it could have been. There's some solid teams in this league.
Now let me just run just a quick question and just one point of clarification. With the added teams, is there now a conference championship game in the AAC?
No, they're at 11 teams.
Oh, still 11.
They will not get 12.
Okay.
Yeah, they get 12 next year when Navy joins, so we'll have a conference title game next year. But for this year, there is no conference title game.
Okay, so not just yet. All right, very good. On to the next conference in our college football preview. That was John in Connecticut. We also have Ron in New Jersey joining us. I'm Dave Medina. Hope you're enjoying it tonight. We're at DitCow on Twitter if you want to chat with us or ask a question or anything else you want to hear from us tonight. Let us know at DitCow. Okay, to the Big 12. And this is a fun conference. And Oklahoma put itself right back on the map as a serious contender with that Sugar Bowl win. But it was more than just that. It's the fact that Trevor Knight really became the guy. And he's going to be the guy at quarterback for the Sooners. And that's a big deal. Because quarterback is usually one of the weaker spots. I think this guy named Landry was a quarterback recently, and he just wasn't that impressive, So Oklahoma might be pretty serious this year. I think they would be the team to beat. We will see about that. Baylor also is going to have a pretty good shot at it because Bryce Petty's returning, and a couple other guys could be returning as well. Their defense, though, is still leaving much to be desired. And then you've got some other potential players. But let's get to the particulars first. We'll start with Ron in New Jersey. Your thoughts on the Big 12?
Well, I think my first thought is I think everybody put a little too much emphasis on the Oklahoma-Alabama game last year at the bowl game. And a lot of people are really high on Oklahoma, and I do think they're going to be, either the first or second team in that conference. But again, you got to remember it's Bob Stoops coaching, so nothing's off the table with them, if you know what I mean.
No, I hear you.
I actually, and you never know what you're going to get week in, week out with them. And who's to say Trevor Knight doesn't get hurt? And God knows what's going to happen then. But I've been, pounding on his team's door for a couple of years now. But I like Baylor in the Big 12. I think Bryce Petty's going to be a sleeper Heisman candidate. You saw improvement on their defense last year, and I know improvement on the defense with Baylor is, from letting up 60 points to just 48. But it was improvement, and they actually had some good defensive games. So I think if they could continue that trend, they got 1 million receivers they could throw to. So I like Baylor to win the conference. I think Oklahoma will probably be number 2. I like the Charlie Strong hire for Texas. I think they're probably still a year or 2 away. I don't believe in their quarterback Ash. I think he's mentally timid on the football field. So I think they'll probably be in the middle of the pack somewhere. I would watch out for Kansas State. God, how old is who's the friggin' coach?
Snyder.
Yeah, Bill Snyder. How
Yeah.
old is he? He's like 85.
Oh,
he's like the Tom Coughlin of college football.
Yeah.
But he keeps churning out these decent teams. You know, once every couple of years they have Tyler Lockett, the wide receiver, who's gonna probably be on a lot of NFL teams' radars come the end of the year. They're going to be right up at the top, and they could surprise a lot of people. And the one interesting team, I guess, to watch is probably going to be Texas Tech because, you know, their coach Cliff Kingsbury's become almost the star of the Big 12. I mean, he's on every college football show. You know, he's modeling. You know, he's all over the place. But and the team really responded to him last year. But if you think it, and their quarterback Davis Webb is going to put up a bunch of numbers, but they went from having like 6 quarterbacks last year to for the spring game this year, I think they had 1 scholarship quarterback.
Ooh.
That was it. And I think they had maybe a freshman coming in the summer, and they had walk-ons leaving the team. So I don't know what's going on there with him, if he's that hard on the quarterbacks or whatever it is, but I think they're going to be a fun team to keep an eye on. But yeah, that's my pick. Is I think Baylor's going to win the Big 12 and probably get to play in one of the not the semifinal games, but one of the playoff games, either the Cotton and they'll probably end up getting killed 80-28 again, something like that. But at least they'll win. So.
Well, if they do make
like
the playoff, that's an attaboy for them. I'm not convinced with their D as much as you might be, Ron. But, you know, I imagine it's going to improve, though, because they have returning guys. But it's still a long way to go. But maybe that's just because of the pace of play, though. That's the thing I hadn't thought about. Like, maybe it's just because they run so many plays that they're inevitably going to give up other points, like a fast break team does in basketball. So maybe that's what it is. Like, maybe it's not just so much that, it's just bad defense. It's like the pace of play dictates more points as well. I'm not really sure. But first, let's get to John in Connecticut for his thoughts on the Big 12. What are your predictions?
Yeah, Ron pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I agree completely that I think everyone is reacting a little bit too much from Oklahoma's win. I understand it was a huge win for the Big 12, a huge win for Oklahoma, and Trevor Knight played amazing, but let's not forget, I mean, he played pretty poorly throughout the rest of the season. I mean, I think they had like 3 others. They had that guy Blake Bell he's like with 300 pounds playing quarterback too. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, and the same thing with Stoops. You can't trust him. He's going to lose a game or two that they should win every year, and the schedule looks really, really easy for them. There's not really that many tough road games, but I just can't trust them. So I agree with the Baylor pick. I think they have one of the best offenses in the country. Might be better than Oregon's with Bryce Petty and the running back Shock Linwood and the receivers Antoine Goodley and Levi Norwood. That's about as good as a group of skilled position players that you're going to get. The defense has improved. It has to get better, but like Ron said, you go from allowing 60 to 48. Well, when your offense is scoring 55 a game, I mean, you're gonna win those games. So I'm definitely gonna pick Baylor. I even think the Big 12 is strong enough that they could get a spot in the playoff. Probably one of the last spots. I put them as the number 4 team in the playoff at Baylor. So I'll have Baylor number 1, Oklahoma 2. I agree with this Kansas State as well as third. Tyler Lockett is a very underrated receiver. You watch that bowl game against Michigan, he just killed them. Their quarterback too. They did the 2 quarterback situation last year. Now it's solely on Jake Waters' shoulders. If you watch this guy play, he throws an unbelievable deep ball. You got to watch him throw it to Lockett down the field. It's a thing of beauty, really. And their defense should be solid. So I'll put them as a third as well. The rest of the teams in the middle of the pack, Texas, TCU. I agree about Texas Tech. They could surprise. Davis Webb. He had that great game in the bowl game when they just upset Arizona State. Todd Graham must have been, putting in resumes for other jobs instead of preparing for that game. But those are the teams in the middle of the pack. Expected down year 2 from Oklahoma State. They pretty much lose everybody off their team from last year. And I hate to say something's a lock, but Florida State is only a 17-point favorite over them in the first game of the season in Dallas. As you know, I'm up for a hypothetical wager now and then. I'd be shocked if Florida State doesn't win that by 3 or 4 touchdowns. I mean, Oklahoma State has no secondary. They're losing just a ton of skill players and on the offensive line. It's going to be they're going to, Gundy's a good coach. They'll get their 6 or 7 wins, but that is just a total mismatch in the opening game of the season. Dana Holgorsen might get fired by the end of this year. They're terrible. The Blooms really come off his road. I mean, going from scoring 70 points in the Orange Bowl a couple years ago, now he's just, he's going to lose his job. And, Charlie Weiss is still like Kansas, so there you go. So in short, Baylor will be my pick, like Ron, and I do think they can get a spot in the playoff, but they'll be the number 4 team.
I think Oklahoma State's been so competitive for such a long time. I think this sort of year is certainly allowed. I mean, I think they'll be able to recruit and reload, and it's just going to be tough this year because it's just they lose everybody at once. I sense that too. Good call on the Florida State-Oklahoma State game. I may revive the locks of the week and institute that as my first pick, but seriously, that's a good call. So, guys, we're on TCU. Matt Jokel will be transferred from A&M for that, but I kind of agree with you though. I think TCU's really been struggling lately. And can you only imagine? It was only about 4 years ago that they were in the Rose Bowl beating Wisconsin. So they've really fallen a lot since the move to the Big 12. So I'm not sure if they're cut out for this conference at this point. Ron, any final wrap-up on Big 12?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what happened to them. Who knows? But it definitely seems like they're not cut out for the Big 12. Holgerson's probably going to get fired, like John said, at the end of the year. There's a lot of little storylines in the Big 12, but ultimately, I think I'd love to see Baylor make the playoffs. I just don't know if with that committee, if they're actually going to recognize a team like a Baylor if they win their conference. It seems like the thinking is that they're going to go for the marquee names, which you hope doesn't happen, but because I would personally love to see Baylor make the Final Four. I'm a big fan of theirs. I love Art Browse. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country.
And Baylor is really fun to watch. Anybody who sees their games, you're guaranteed entertainment in a lot of cases. I mean, they've really only scored less than, 40 points like 2 times the whole season. And one of those 2 times was Oklahoma State where they can't win anyway. And it was like below 0 or something like that. Really cold. So, that doesn't happen. Their offense is legit. Is legit. Period. So I think they will be fun to watch. It'll be a good follow all year long. So now we move on to the Big Ten. There's more juice to this conference than I anticipated, but when I was starting to do the research for this conference, because I thought, well, it's just Ohio State and Michigan State, but no, you're also looking at Wisconsin in the Western Division. You're looking at a potential. There won't be much from it, but with Penn State, at least in a couple years, could be pretty good with James Franklin, new coach. And Michigan, okay, I don't think Michigan's very good, but they are going to be entertaining because of the Mongo coaching that will be involved in that one. And Minnesota's improving. I mean, and you have Northwestern, which could rebound from last year. They lost 6 games in a row. All of them were close. So I feel like they've got enough talent to get to a bowl. It's not as bad as I thought it was. So, John, let's get your rundown of the Big Ten. Who are the teams to watch?
Well, Dave, I'll tell you who won't be winning the Big Ten this year. And that's Rutgers. So let's get that out of the way. Let's get to some real teams.
Okay.
They got rid of the Legends and Leaders division. Although I shall say that just like clockwork, before the season starts, there will be a post from someone who likes to put pictures of new chip flavors on the board. That Rutgers could be a sleeper, so you just wait and see. All right, so let's look at the Big Ten East, and this is clearly the stronger of the 2 divisions, and it's going to come down to Michigan State and Ohio State. Now, I think Michigan State holds the edge because the game's at home. I think they're a more physical team than Ohio State. I just like the style of football they play. Their defensive coordinator, Pat Narduzzi, easily could have left for numerous jobs in the offseason. He actually kind of flirted with UConn for a little bit. So I think even though they lose some players, Darquez Denard is a really good player for them. I forgot where he got drafted, but they lose some guys there. But I think having him as a coordinator, they're just going to kind of reload. Their offense really took flight towards the end of last year. Connor Cook started to play well, and they have their running back Jeremy Langford, who's going to do all the work inside. So I think Michigan State will take the East, and because they get Nebraska, Ohio State, and Michigan at home. That's the key here. And they have a huge non-conference game, week 2, Michigan State at Oregon. I cannot wait to watch that game. That is going to be fascinating. Yeah, that is going to be great. So I think it's between Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State should have another pretty good year. Braxton Miller, obviously, is going to be in Heisman Trophy contention. I just think that because the game is at Michigan State, they get the edge. I think Brady Hoke will be fired at the end of the season, and Jim Harbaugh will be the next Michigan coach. You can quote me on that one.
Calling it.
And I just don't see Michigan doing anything. I mean, they're going to win their 7 or 8 games, but they have road games at Notre Dame, at Michigan State, at Ohio State. It's going to be tough. I actually like Maryland to finish ahead of Michigan, assuming they stay healthy, of course. They can never stay healthy. My old friend Randy Edsel bringing his team to the Big Ten. I think they can do pretty well and finish 3rd in the Big Ten East. The rest of the division, not much to talk about. Penn State will be pretty good in a couple years with James Franklin, but he kind of strikes me as kind of a douche. But we'll see. He did a nice job at Vanderbilt, obviously. We'll see how he does at Penn State. They're a few years away. As for the West, now, this is a pretty open division until today, where I saw Northwestern just lost their star running back, Benrick Marcus, transferring.
Oh, boy.
And their leading receiver, Christian Jones, is out with some injury. So I love Pat Fitzgerald, but I got to knock them down a couple pegs. Nebraska, they lost 4 defenders on defense already to injuries, and Bo Pelini is just a mongo of all mongos. They lose 3 or 4 games a year. That's not going to change anything. Minnesota, Illinois, and Purdue are irrelevant, although I think Illinois is going to be a little better this year. So it comes down to Wisconsin and Iowa, and everyone loves Iowa this year because they have such an easy schedule. They had a pretty decent season last year. They're returning a lot of players, but you can tell me the only time that Iowa's ever had expectations and they just completely fall flat on their face. I don't get the Kirk Ferentz hype. I can see them failing to reach expectations again this year. So kind of by default, we'll go with Wisconsin. I do think they're a really solid team. They, like Michigan State, have a really intriguing non-conference game. They play LSU week 1, so that'll be a game to watch. But overall, I think they're the most solid team in the division. Their quarterback has been great, Bobby, but their running back, Melvin Gordon, he's another guy very underrated. And I think he could be a Heisman contender. They just punish you, and I really like their coach too, Gary Anderson. He did a great job at Utah State. He kind of came over here and instilled that same philosophy. So I'll go Michigan State in the East and Wisconsin in the West. I think Michigan State wins the Big Ten once again. This is where the controversy hits. I think the Big Ten will be the team that's left out of the playoffs. So I think Michigan State will be essentially your 5th team in kind of the rankings. I think they'll win the Big Ten, and they will not make the college football playoff.
There's all sorts of called it in this rundown that you just had, John. Really, I mean, first you had Brady Hoke getting fired. That's not really calling it. He's done. Like, that guy sucks. But then Harbaugh going to Michigan, which is not a stretch, but just the idea that he's going to leave San Francisco after this year, that is bold in a sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it's bold. I like it. And Michigan State winning the division over Ohio State, as you mentioned, they got the home field in their head-to-head. Could be interesting. I think the thing you got to watch for Michigan State is injuries. Like, there could be injuries, but that's true of every team, so I guess it's kind of silly to even make that point. I like D'Antonio, too. He's a good coach. So, Ron, let's get your rundown of the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what John said. In the end, I mean, I think it comes down to Ohio State and Michigan State. I would love to see Michigan State win again like they did last year, beating Ohio State in the conference title game. I don't like Ohio State personally, but I just don't see Urban Meyer losing 2 years in a row in a big game to a rival team. And say what you will about Urban Meyer, and I can't stand the guy. I think he's a hypocrite. I think he preaches, but he doesn't practice. If that makes sense, I think he's a Bible thumping guy who has some of the worst character guys lining his team. But you have to give it to him. He always puts out a competitive team and always finds a way to win. And I mean, they had times at times last year they looked like they were going through the motions, and they were still beating teams by 30, 40 points. And I mean, they just looked sloppy as could be, but they were still something team. So I think they actually come out a little bit improved this year. I think they're going to be tougher than they were last year. Michigan State is stacked. They have, they're going to have another great defensive year. Like John said, the offense is going to be much improved. The guy Calhoun, the defensive end that they have, is probably going to be a top 10 pick next year. Even though they lost Darquez Denard, they have a kid named Trey Waynes. Keep an eye on him. He'll probably be one of the top cornerback picks in next year's draft. So they have a lot of talent. I just don't think that they can beat Ohio State 2 years in a row with Urban Meyer as coach, even though I would like to see it happen. So I think Ohio State will come out of the East with Penn State and Michigan probably, far behind. I think Maryland will do good this year. I think they have the program going in the right direction to enter the Big Ten. I think it's the complete opposite for Rutgers. I think they have the program going in the wrong direction. Starting Gary Nova for the 8th or 9th season in a row. I don't even know how that's possible, but with a coach who a lot of the alum can't stand. It's just not, with all the turmoil going on with their athletic director in the past year or so, it's just not a good situation. So they're, in my opinion, they're the worst team in the Big Ten. But in the West, like John said, Wisconsin is going to be a tough team to beat. Melvin Gordon is electric. He might have a chance to be a first-round pick next year. He's that good. Iowa, they have the expectations, but again, they never live up to them. They'll probably be right there. But the team I'm going to go with to come out of the West is Nebraska. And I know that sounds crazy because it's Bo Pelini, and is there a bigger Mongo on planet Earth than Bo Pelini? I'd be hard-pressed to find one. But I actually like their team that they have this year. They have good players on defense. They have Randy Gregory, who watch out for him. He's going to be a sack specialist at the defensive end. They have some talent in the backfield. So I actually think, and they have a tough schedule, but I think in the end, the West will probably have a couple teams with 3 or 4 losses, and I like them to get to the title game against Ohio State, and Ohio State will definitely beat them.
Interesting. So you're pretty confident about Nebraska, and I will say that they do have some talented players on the team. So I didn't think of them as like a sub 500 team, maybe like a 6-5 team or 7-4 team or whatever that number is. So nicely done, Ron. Let's now go to Conference USA. I was considering just skipping this all together, but you both brought up Marshall, so let's get into Conference USA for just a couple moments. John, you first. What do you have from Conference USA?
Oh man, Dave, I didn't have a write-up in Conference USA.
Oh, you didn't know? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, Dave, it's fine. It's fine. I can adjust on the fly here. Yeah. So Marshall clearly is the best team in the conference. They're everyone's Cinderella pick to go 12-0 and get to the Chick-fil-A Bowl or whatever it's called as the quote-unquote group of 5 representative. The only problem I have is that their schedule is just awful. I mean, Conference USA, some of these teams, they have some of the worst teams in the country in this conference at the bottom. If you give me a minute here, I'm flipping through my magazine. My old friend Phil Steele has a million predictions calling Georgia a surprise team. What a joke that is. But, I mean, Conference USA is not very good. Hold on, let me get their schedule here. All right, so Marshall is playing this year at Miami of Ohio, Rhode Island, Ohio, at Akron, at Old Dominion, Middle Tennessee, at FIU, Florida Atlantic, at Southern Miss, Rice, at UAB, Western Kentucky. Wow. No, that is just bad. I mean, the best team on that schedule, if I had to just make an educated guess here, I don't even know. It might be Akron, to be honest with you, and that's saying something. With Terry Bowden and Akron might be the best team on their schedule. If they go 12-0 against that schedule, and they probably should because they have one of the Rakeem Cato is really, really good, and they have a lot of weapons. They score like 40 or 50 points a game, so they're going to go 12-0. But how do you weigh that 12-0 against, say, Central Florida or someone from the American or ACC or Boise State that goes 10-2 in a better conference? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. So they're really the only team to talk about in the Conference USA. Actually, I will mention one other team here. What a job that Larry Coker has done at Texas UTSA, University of Texas San Antonio. They're in their first year of a full FBS membership. Last year they were like still a transitional member, and they nearly won the entire West Division, which says something about the talent they've garnered. They're kind of like a sleeping giant, I guess, down there. They might dominate this league in a couple of years. They returned 19 starters out of 21 starters. They just got to replace their QB, but like a lot of these other teams, as long as you have the kind of the rest of the system in place, they'll be interesting. So I think Marshall will clearly win, but UTSA is a team to watch out for this season.
Boy, I'd wonder what happened to Larry Coker. Good to hear from him again. Ron, your thoughts on Conference USA? Anything you wanted to add?
No, absolutely not. I think John's 100% right. It's Marshall, and I don't know what else.
All right, we'll move on then.
Raheem. I'll say this: Raheem Cato might be a Heisman finalist at the end of the year.
Wow,
that's all I have.
That good, interesting. All right. Well, let's get to MACtion, the MAC conference, Mid American. I forget what it means, but MAC is our next conference to cover. This isn't going to be a preview of anybody that's going to challenge for a national championship, but it's still fun to watch. You see them a lot on ESPN2 on Friday night or what have you, and it'll be a fun one to follow. Last year we heard from Kent State and Northern Illinois and Bowling Green. Bowling Green's probably going to be the big favorite this year in the MAC. So, John, let's get your look at the MAC conference.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better to me anyway than, Tuesday and Wednesday nights in November, you got the MACtion. It's awesome. I would rather watch the MAC any day of the week than Conference USA. That league is just a disgrace. You can't even name who's in that league. In any event, serious. If I have to look it up every time to see the 14 teams in that league. It's just constantly changing every year. So for the MAC, you're right, Dave. Bowling Green's the clear favorite. They should have the best offense in the league. They get the new coach this year, a former Art Briles disciple, Dino Davers, who was the coach at Eastern Illinois last year, and he coached Jimmy Garoppolo, who's now with the Patriots. They had an unbelievable offense. He's been in the system to Bowling Green, so they're a clear favorite. Northern Illinois is probably the other team to watch. Even though they lose Jordan Lynch in the career, you're not going to replace his production. They're still pretty talented. Other than that, there's really not much to say about the MAC. Just enjoy the MACtion on Tuesday and Wednesday night. So that's about it.
I mean, MACtion will be a good time to bridge the gaps between Mondays and Sundays, right? Or Mondays and Saturdays. So it'll be a good time. It'll be fun to check that out. Always good for the occasional hypothetical wager, and it definitely passes the time. So, anything you wish to add, Ron, regarding the MAC conference?
No, it's one of my favorites too, and I agree. I think Bowling Green's the favorite. Northern Illinois will be there. Ball State will probably be good. It seems like their coach Pete Lembo always has a competitive team on the field, and I think I remember John saying that he wanted him to be considered for the UConn job last year, and I think maybe at the end of this year that he might be he'd probably be a good fit for Rutgers once they file Kyle Flood, because you already got the Midwest connection there. So that's my I guess, quote unquote bold prediction is that Pete Lembo will be the Rutgers coach next season. If that's considered a bold prediction, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's all right. It's not bad. I mean, it's a pretty mildly interesting prediction. I'll dig that. I dig that. Okay, our next conference is the Mountain West in our college football preview program. Ron in New Jersey joins us tonight. You just heard from him. John in Connecticut is our other guest, and I'm Dave Medina. We're ready to count you down to the college football season. We're about 15 days away. The 28th is when they have that game on the SEC network between South Carolina and I think Georgia, to start the year. So that's going to be pretty exciting. We're getting really close. So now to the Mountain West. One of the more fun mid-major conferences. I mean, certainly not the worst football ever, but the leader of that conference is going to be a little different. For a while, it had been Boise State had led the WAC. Now they're in the Mountain West, but this year they don't have their longtime coach, Chris Petersen. He's gone, but the talent is still there. So it seems that many experts are picking them to be the favorite, but there's still a bunch of others who could be in the mix. Fresno State, you might hear from Utah State with Chucky Keaton coming back from injury. It'll be a fun conference to follow. So let's talk to John in Connecticut and get your thoughts on the Mountain West.
Yeah, the Mountain West is, another one of my favorite conferences. I really enjoy the kind of late night games from the Mountain West. Thursday and Friday nights too. ESPN2 does a good job getting them on there, along with BYU. They're on pretty much every Friday night. Boise State, you're right. They lose Chris Petersen, which is huge. The guy they hired, Brian Harsin, was the head coach at Arkansas State for 1 year. I guess he's a former Boise assistant, but there's got to be some drop-off when you go from a guy like Chris Petersen to someone else. I think the coaching change will have an effect this year. Even though I do think they'll win the the Mountain Division. But watch out for Utah State. Chucky Keaton is back, and he's one of the most dynamic players in college football. Obviously, if he stays healthy, they'll lose a lot of other players from their defense and their line from last year. But I think they can reload. They have an interesting game against Tennessee in Week 1. That'll be a good one to watch. As for the West, Fresno loses Derek Carr. They get the transfer from Duke, Brandon Kennett, as we mentioned before. But I kind of like San Diego State. There's something about that team. They just played like 4 or 5 overtime games last year. They were one of the most entertaining teams to watch. And I think they return their quarterback, Quinn Kaler. I think they break through and win the West Division. So I think Boise State over San Diego State is my prediction for the Mountain West. But overall, really an interesting league. I should say, once again, that I pretty much like watching every of these mid-major leagues except Conference USA. That's just how bad that league is.
Oh, man, that really tells you.
Yeah, I feel bad, but,
yeah.
Who wants to watch UTEP and FIU play? Who cares? I'm sorry if any UTEP fans are listening, but just listen.
They're big. I don't even know how they ended up being FBS material. How'd they qualify? It's crazy. Anyway, let's get Ron in New Jersey's look at the Mountain West. Ron?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Mountain West too. It's always nice to be able to turn on the TV at when you're going to sleep at 11:30, 12 o'clock on a Friday night, and be able to watch a college football game in its entirety. So yeah, I'm a big fan. I think. I'm going to root for Utah State in the Mountain Division. I love Chucky Keaton, big fan of his. The injury last year was devastating. He's one of the most exciting players in college football. And I do think there's going to be a little drop-off at Boise with the coaching change. I think they'll still be pretty good. But I'll say Utah State over Boise, and Colorado State is the team to watch out for. I think they're going to be much improved this year. They'll probably end up third. But watch out for them. And in the West, I'll say San Diego State's a good pick. I wasn't even thinking about them. I was going to say Fresno State. I can't stand Fresno State. I'm sorry. I just can't. Anything that allowed Derek Carr to be, both of the Carrs to be quarterback for God knows how long. I can't stand them. So I'll piggyback off of Checker and say that San Diego State and Utah State in the title game. I like Utah State. I'm going to root for Chucky Keaton.
I mean, yeah, I'm moving for Chucky Keaton too. I just hope he doesn't get hurt again. That guy was really fun to watch. All right, so now we get to the biggies, the Pac-12 first, and honestly, my favorite conference to follow for obvious reasons. I'm a USC Trojan fan. Been following that team for about 15 years, and they could be pretty good. Steve Sarkisian rejoins the team, and with that comes a new staff and a pretty good defense. I think this team has some pretty decent expectations. I'd put them at 10 wins. I won't predict anything beyond that. I mean, who knows where that will take them, but we'll see. At least I was thinking 10 wins, maybe more. We'll see what happens to that team this year. But the whole conference is great. 10 returning starting quarterbacks out of 12 teams. That's phenomenal. That stat comes to us via coach, my buddy and roommate. And Marcus Mariotta could be a very legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate this year for Oregon. And Oregon's going to have a great year. The question is, can they take it to the next level? UCLA is a big part of this. That's a good team. Defensively, they are very solid, very good. Mora comes back, and that's big news. Brent Hundley comes back. That's huge news. So this team looks very experienced and very good defensively. That's talent. That's a good team, and who knows where they go. And then you've got Stanford, where I think a lot of people are going to overlook them, but that's still a very tough physical team, very good defensive team. And I mean, they'll have a different quarterback, but it could be a different. But it still could be pretty good. And Petersen start at Washington. They haven't really figured out the quarterback spot yet. We'll see. Arizona, the two Arizona schools look okay. Cal has nowhere to go but up. And Oregon State, I'm not sure what they're going to do. They lost Brandon Cooks, and he was amazing. But they did keep Sean Mannion at quarterback. So that's how we start. Let's start with Ron first with the Pac-12. Which teams are you going to see as the true contenders for the championship from the Pac-12?
Well, Dave, if you saw my post today, you probably know where I'm headed. But,
I did.
I like UCLA this year. I like them a lot, actually. I think it's almost in my mind at least, it's almost like a parallel what they're doing to what USC did under Pete Carroll. You get the failure NFL coach to come in, but they're young enough and energetic enough to revive the fan base and the program. And you got to give Jim Moore. And I'll be the first to say I thought Moore would be a flop at UCLA, but he's done everything right. And I think the addition of Brett Hundley coming back is huge with his experience. I think they're going to be deadly on offense. They return a ton of guys on both sides of the ball. You have a star on offense in Hundley. You have a star on defense with the linebacker Miles Jack, who could even be a sleeper Heisman pick. And if you look at their schedule, all their tough games are at home. So I think you got that going for them. I just for some reason I just really like them this year. I liked them last year. They hit a few bumps in the road, but I'm going to say UCLA to win the conference. So in the South, obviously they take it. I think USC and Arizona State will be right there with them. The conference from top to bottom is just loaded. I mean, you could probably dismiss Colorado, but even Arizona and Utah in the South are going to be tough. In the North, it's going to come down to Oregon and Stanford. I like Oregon a lot, but they're just such a frustrating team to get a handle on because they have all the talent in the world. They probably have the #1 pick in the draft next year playing quarterback for them when everybody thought he was going to leave early. They have a cornerback, I forget the guy's name because it's like 4 different names, but he's probably the best cornerback in the nation. I mean, they just got so much talent, but they always have those 1 or 2 games in the past couple of years where they just don't show up. They don't show up, or they just get beat up. They'll beat teams 60-0 for a month straight, and then play Stanford and just get beat up physically. So I can't buy them as the national title contender, but I do think they'll win the North, beating out Stanford. Washington's going to be right up there, and this is my favorite conference to watch. So I'll say UCLA over Oregon in the title game.
I couldn't agree with you more about Oregon, though. It's really hard to trust them, especially now. They just always find a way to lose that game in a big spot. And they did it twice last year, Arizona and against Stanford. So it just makes you. It really always makes you hold your. It makes you hold your breath a little bit with those guys. It just you can never truly know. They seem to be easily would you call them a bullied team even? I don't know. But let's go to John in Connecticut with his looks at the Pac-12. John, this is a tough conference to predict. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these teams, all 12 of them, I'd say that if you were going to play a road game because obviously you have a home field advantage, the only team here that I think you could say that gimme win on your schedule would be Cal. I think they're just going to be horrible once again. I feel bad. I think Sonny Dykes is a good coach, but he just stepped into a bad situation. I mean, I don't know what the hell Jeff Tedford was doing the last couple of years. He was there, but clearly they are just bad. So they're a gimme win. But the rest of the teams in this conference, I mean, even Colorado is getting much better. They have 10. They might have like 9 or 10 bowl teams in this league. As for the top of the league, I'm going to agree with what Ron said. I really like UCLA, and it's funny because I just completely clowned Jim Moore when they hired him, and he's been fabulous. I can't say how much I was wrong and how much of a good job he's done. Ron is right. They get their most important games: Oregon, Stanford, Arizona, and USC all at home. They have 2 really tough road games though, at Washington and at Arizona State. Now the thing is, like I said before, even if they lose one of those games, and I think they could lose at Washington, they could still easily make the playoffs if they win their division and then win the Pac-12 title game. So losing one game in the Pac-12 isn't going to hurt you because these teams they're going to beat up on each other. So I do like UCLA in the South Division. I think Plumlee is your Heisman contender. Same thing with Miles Jack, and they would just return a ton of guys. So I'll go with them slightly over USC, who I will say, Dave, I think they made a very underwhelming hire with Steve Sarkisian. I mean, he's a solid coach, but I mean, he left a ton of talent at Washington, and they can only win like 7 games a year. So we'll see how he does there. As for the North, you got to make Oregon the favorite. I think Stanford loses a lot this year. They're going to be a tough physical team like always, but I just don't think they lose some O-linemen and their top running backs. I don't think they can lean on their passing game. They need that to be in congruence with their running game, which it won't be as strong. So I say Oregon will win the North, slightly over Washington. Even Oregon State will be solid this year. Sean Mannion is going to be a dark horse Heisman contender. He's going to put up huge numbers once again, even without Brandon Cooks. Like I said, this whole league is just really, really good, and I agree with Ron. I really enjoy watching the Pac-12. So I agree with his prediction of UCLA over Oregon, and I will say UCLA will get a spot in the Final Four.
UCLA has the most talented team I think I've seen in my lifetime. I really think they are that good. And I would not be surprised in the least if they won their division. They honestly should. I think the only thing I worry about with UCLA is because this is such new territory for the Bruins, especially the Bruins, because USC, when they started making a run, to those national championships with Pete Carroll, there was a history of them winning championships before, multiple championships, multiple Rose Bowls. This isn't the case with UCLA. I mean, they've been to Rose Bowls in the past, but national titleship contention doesn't happen more than maybe once every 25 years with UCLA. So it's very exciting, but at the same time, you wonder whether that lack of experience as a franchise or as a program is going to overtake them. I don't know, but if you look at it on paper, that is a team that I think is going to be the clear favorite in that South Division, no question about it. So now, John, before I move on to your point about Sarkisian, I will agree. I would much rather we had James Franklin. I would much rather we've had Chris Petersen. It is disappointing. I don't know what it was that led them to miss out on the other two. Maybe they just wanted to go to places closer to what they felt comfortable in. I suppose so. But are you going to say that Steve Sarkisian was a slam dunk? No. But I will say this. When they hired Pete Carroll, just as everybody was saying just a few minutes ago, nobody said that was a slam dunk either. So I would say let's ride it out and see how it goes. The talent is definitely there, so they'll make some noise this year no matter what happens. We'll see. I mean, we will see. You're right. It was underwhelming in a from a coaching standpoint in Washington, but I'm going to give it about 2 years. We'll see what that team does. They've got the horses. We'll see what they do. So that's my look at the Pac-12. Personally, this is pretty good. Ron, was there anything else you wanted to add regarding the Pac-12 conference?
No, except that in my mind I see UCLA winning, and you immediately going on to BeMyCareCessor.com and complaining that USC never wins. Just like the Steelers and the Dodgers and the Lakers.
And the Kings.
And the Kings.
Yeah, the Kings.
But that's what I have in my mind when I come up with.
My teams never win. Well, that comment's pretty silly at this point. All right, let's go to the final of the big conferences to run down. I'm not leaving out Notre Dame. We'll cover them in a minute. But the SEC, again, we talked about it in the beginning of the program. It's the conference that's had the most notoriety in the last 10 years, and Alabama probably is going to be the one that's the most hyped because they've got such great recruiting. They should be the team to. They should be the team to play. They should be the team to beat. That's sort of my feeling of it. A couple things with Auburn and Georgia. Georgia's got like a bunch of guys coming back from injuries and some seniors. Todd Gurley III, Keith Marshall, Malcolm Mitchell, and Conley and Bennett. They all are going to have a role on this team, assuming they don't get hurt again. I think this is going to be a much better Georgia season. Adding to that is Jeremy Pruitt, the new defensive coordinator, and that defense could not play any worse than it did last season. They need improvement on defense. But the problem is all that stuff's unknown. We don't know if they're all going to stay healthy. We don't know if the defensive coordinator is going to be that good. We don't know what's going to happen with that. So I'm a little skeptical about Auburn. They got a lot of luck winning those games last year. That's where I'm skeptical. But they do have a lot of returning guys, including Nick Marshall. So that's a good story. Vanderbilt's going to step back. What do you guys think about Ole Miss? That's an interesting call. All right, John, let me give you the first word on the SEC. How do you see it? There's a lot to cover, so feel free to go take a look.
Yeah, a lot of interesting storylines here, Dave. I guess I'll start in the East because it's the least interesting of the two divisions. I think it's between South Carolina and Georgia once again. I'll pick South Carolina just because I think they have a little more returning talent, and I like Spurrier a little bit more over Mark Richt. Dylan Thompson is going to be the quarterback. He's got some game experience. Spurrier likes to shuffle his quarterback, so he does have game experience. But the key for their season will be Mike Davis, their running back. And they're plenty talented on defense. I know losing Clowney is a pretty big loss, but really, honestly, you saw him last year. He was either double-teamed every play or really didn't give his 100% effort. So to say, you're not going to lose much losing Clowney. Well, last year's Clowney, you're really not going to lose that much. So I think they'll win the East. I think Georgia, their situation, losing Aaron Murray, I know Hudson Mason played in the bowl game, but they lost that one. Gurley and Marshall is just about as good of 1 and 2 running back can you find. But once again, with these coaches, Mark Richt will lose a game or two. I remember they lost to Vanderbilt last year, should have lost to Tennessee. He'll drop one that they probably shouldn't. So I like South Carolina in the East. I actually think Missouri is pretty underrated. I think they'll finish third again. Just like I'm sure when no one picked them and they won the division. I do think they're not going to win it this year, but they'll finish third. I like their quarterback, Matty Mock. I do not understand the Florida love. How is this team in the top 25? They couldn't beat Georgia Southern on their home field last year, and they're in top 25. And that's just why preseason rankings are pretty good. Will Muschamp probably is going to get fired at the end of the season. Their offense is just not good at all. That's really all there is to say about the East. Tennessee's improving. Watch out for them in a couple of years. But this year, nothing much to say about them. Vandy or Kentucky. Now the West is really, really interesting. Now you got obviously Alabama. Like Florida State, they just reload. Jacob Coker comes in as a transfer quarterback. I guess they are all saying that he played just about even with Jameis Winston last year in the preseason. But obviously Winston won the battle, and the rest is history. So Coker transfers to Alabama. And I think they're going to win this division almost by default because the rest of the teams LSU is really, really young. Watch out for them in 2 or 3 years. when these guys that they have, these talented players they have become upperclassmen. I just think they're too inexperienced this year. But their freshman running back, Leonard Fournette, I believe is his name. Everyone is talking about this guy as the next big thing, so watch out for him. So I think Bama will win the division. LSU will be second. Now Auburn, I think for my money, Gus Malzahn is the best coach in college football. Just the way he took that team last year from literally a complete joke in 2012, and they're playing for the national title, and almost literally could have won it. Toe-to-toe with Florida State. But listen to this road schedule they have: at Kansas State, at Mississippi State, at Mississippi, and the two biggest revenge games you'll ever see, at Georgia and at Alabama. The way they won those two with those miracle plays. So they're going to lose 2 or 3 games, and really might be as strong as they were last year, and that's just going to knock them out. And then the rest of the division, watch out for Texas A&M. Not this year, like 3 years from now. Kevin Sumlin is an unbelievable recruiter, and they have some really, really good young talent. But that's what it is. They're young. So 2 or 3 years down the road, I think A&M could win this division. But right now, they're just really young, and they'll probably win 6 or 7 games. Same thing. People are hyping Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I don't buy it. I think Bo Wallace will hold back Ole Miss. And Mississippi State's never done anything. I don't know why people are giving them preseason hype. And then Arkansas is just a joke. Brett Bielema was not long for the SEC. So, in short, we'll go with Bama over South Carolina, almost as a default. I think, and they're certainly going to make the playoff because it's the SEC, but I think Bama, I hate to say that Bama is going to win the conference because I don't like Nick Saban and the way he does things, but that is what it is, and I think they'll get the job done this year, and we'll see them in the 14 playoff.
That team just looks so deep. I can't. Even as much as you want to see Bama get served again, it's just not realistic to think that at this time. At least from my point of view. Let's get Ron's point of view on the SEC.
All right, I'll be honest with you, Dave. I don't know what to make of the SEC this year because it seems like there's just so many teams in I don't want to say rebuilding mode, but I guess you can say that you have Alabama placing so many guys on offense. Like John said, LSU is just a young team. You're probably going to end up seeing an all-freshman backfield with Brandon Harris as the quarterback and Leonard Fournette, who's supposed to be, the next great running back, running the ball. So like he said, they might be a year or 2 away. I almost want to say, I know it's stupid and they're not going to live up to expectations. I almost want to say Ole Miss could win the East because they have so much talent. But in the end, I guess you have to say Alabama. You just have to give it to Nick Saban. Even though I hate the hire of Lane Kiffin, I think they have just so much talent from top to bottom that it's almost impossible for them not to win that division this year. They have T.J. Yeldon, who's going to be a Heisman contender at running back. You have Amari Cooper at wide receiver, who's probably going to be the first wide receiver taken next year in the NFL draft. So I'll say Alabama in the West, and in the East, it comes down to Georgia and South Carolina. And I'm a big Spurrier guy. I love South Carolina. I love Spurrier, favorite college football coach. But I'll say Georgia edges them out this year. Todd Gurley, the running back, is definitely going to be on the Heisman radar. He might be a top 15 pick next year in the NFL draft. He's that good. They get Todd Marshall coming back, and I love the hire of Jeremy Pruitt as the defensive coordinator. He took over Florida State's defense, and you saw how they were just monsters last year under him. So I think that's a huge hire for Georgia, and it's just amazing to think that 7-8 years ago he was a assistant coach on the Hoover High School football team on MTV Two-A-Days, the TV show, and now he's probably one step away from being a head football coach at a big time college program, maybe even Florida next year if they fire Muschamp. So it's amazing to see that transformation. But I'll say Georgia over South Carolina in the East, and Alabama will probably be the SEC champion. And I can guarantee you that whoever comes out of the SEC, even if they have 3 or 4 losses, will probably be in the 14 playoffs.
I think it's safe to say. I would be incredibly surprised if there was no SEC at all. I mean, I think we were surprised just to see an SEC team lose a game in the championship. To not see him in the 4-team playoff would just be unbelievable. Like, it'd be literally shocking. Not many things can be that shocking, but that would be that shocking. So anyway, moving on. Great predictions, first of all, everybody. Let's now cover the best of the rest, so the independents. But basically, this is about Notre Dame. And Notre Dame probably be pretty good despite losing both their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. That's kind of crazy. But they do get back Golson at quarterback after an infraction of educational issues, or academic issues you'd call it, last year. But he's back, and he should be starting for them. I don't see any reason for him not to. So for that, I think this is going to be a good team, maybe even an improved team over last year, which already had a decent season. 9 wins, 10 wins, pretty realistic. How do you see it, John in Connecticut?
I like Brian Kelly. I've always been a fan of his. I know he's done some shenanigans that will be less than reputable, but I think he's a really good coach. I could see him being in the NFL not too shortly. The thing this year is he loses both of his coordinators from last year. Obviously, we mentioned Diaco coming here to UConn, but he also lost his offensive coordinator. I believe he went to Miami of Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. And Notre Dame has a tough schedule this year. I'll give them credit. Outside of Rice and Purdue, and maybe Syracuse, although they're an okay team, the rest of the teams on the schedule are pretty tough. I mean, they got to play Michigan, Stanford, North Carolina, Florida State, Navy, which is going to have another solid year, Arizona State, Louisville, and USC. So it is not an easy schedule. If they win 9 or 10 games here with that schedule, they'll deserve it, and they'll probably make one of those big, they won't make the playoff, but they'll make one of the New Year's Six or whatever they're calling it. But I think they'll lose a couple of those games. I think they'll obviously lose to Florida State. I think they'll lose to Arizona State. I think they'll lose to USC. So 8 or 9 wins for Notre Dame. It'll be another solid season, and the questions will always be asked of, is Brian Kelly going to stay? Because I know he flirted with the Eagles. The Eagles 2 years ago, or was it? Yeah, before they hired Chip Kelly, they had an interview with Brian Kelly. So we'll see if he stays at Notre Dame for the duration here.
And they're not related, right? Just making sure, not related.
No, they're not related. A lot of Kellys, a lot of Irish guys with the last name of Kelly.
Oh man, Mongo moments, am I right? Okay. So Ron, your thoughts about Notre Dame? Could they make another run to a bowl? What do you think?
I think, as with every year with Notre Dame, it comes down to their schedule, and like John said, it's just too tough for them, I think, to navigate to the national title game. A couple years ago, I mean, they really got a break. They had Oklahoma, which looked like they were going to be a killer team, and they ended up having a down year that year. But there's so many tough teams on their schedule this year. At Arizona State is a tough game. Ending the year at USC. Louisville is tough. At Florida State, I mean, it's an automatic loss. So I don't think they can get to the national title game like they did a couple years ago. But I do think they could win 9 or 10 games and probably make one of the New Year's Day bowls. And the thing about with them is if you put them in the Big Ten or the ACC, I mean, they're probably challenging for a national title, but they choose to stay independent, and it's probably going to be this way, for the foreseeable future, where they might get, 1 year every 10 or so years where they make a national title run, and the rest of the time they're just running through a gauntlet and losing 2 or 3 games a year. But I mean, it's still pretty good considering the amount of good teams that they play.
Oh yeah, I give Notre Dame a lot of credit, and I think I have the last 3 years. They schedule tough opponents every season, and I think lately you can't really use the schedule argument against them. They were always scheduling tough opponents. It's very, very impressive. In the best of times and the worst of times, but certainly right now, I think they do a really good job there. All right, that's about it. So let's get right to it. The title game predictions. We got some bold ones this year, fellas. Let's start with John in Connecticut. How do you see the championship game for college football?
Dave, we went through all the conferences, and you had no luck with the Sun Belt. That's such a shame, Dave.
I love the Sun Belt this year.
I was going to say, if you're going to prove the Sun Belt, I was going to say I'd rather watch 100 Sun Belt games than one Conference USA game. The Sun Belt is entertaining. You've ever seen their games? They're really high scoring, and Louisiana Lafayette's got a good team this year, but we don't need to talk about them, but that's fine. So my playoff predictions, I kind of hinted at it throughout the shows. We went through the various conferences. I think it'll be Florida State, obviously, Alabama, UCLA, and Baylor will be my 4 teams. I think the first team left out is Michigan State. And now I'm assuming, of course, that they're going to do, one conference winner. Now, we have no clue what this committee is going to do, so it's certainly left to be changed for mid-season if we kind of see how they're doing their rankings. But that's how we'll do it for now. Florida State versus Baylor in one semifinal, Alabama versus UCLA in the other, and I think Florida State will repeat over UCLA. I think they just have way too much talent, and I hate picking the chalk, but I just think there's such a discrepancy between Florida State and pretty much everyone else in the country, especially with their quarterback and just the depth that they have is unbelievable. They can sustain some injuries and at some of their positions and just keep on moving. So we'll go Florida State over UCLA in the first season of the college football playoff.
Wow. So Florida State with a repeat championship, and we have not seen that since, wow. I mean, I don't think the USC one got vacated, so I guess that's not in effect. So Alabama then? I don't know. That's pretty cool. I mean, if they repeat, and they could repeat. I mean, they have the talent to do it. All right, Ron, I'm looking forward to this. Ron, your postseason predictions.
Well, I think in one semifinal, it's going to be Florida State and UCLA. And I'll go out on a limb and say UCLA beats Florida State. And the only reason why I would think that is because I think Florida State's conference and schedule is going to be a detriment to them in the end. The level of teams that they play, I think, are going to hinder them come a 14 playoff. And if UCLA does get to that game, they would have had to beat in the last 4 weeks of the season Arizona, Washington, USC, Stanford, and then the Pac-10 title game probably against Oregon. So you're basically saying they've already run a gauntlet. They've played essentially a playoff already to get to that point. So I'll say UCLA to upset Florida State, and in the other semifinal, a game that I just would never want to see, but Alabama and Ohio State, and I'll say Ohio State wins, and they're two of the. I just don't like either one of the programs, but I'll say Ohio State wins, and I'll go for the huge upset and say UCLA over Ohio State in the inaugural playoff championship in Texas, and you can go to work happy the day after. How about that?
Oh my goodness!
If the place is flooded out, if it's not underwater by then.
Oh yeah, exactly. It might be underwater, but for different reasons this time. That would be great for the campus, though. It really will. And I know I speak as a USC fan, but I work at UCLA, so I'd be very happy for everybody there if that does play out. That's really cool. I mean, I think this is the biggest year in UCLA football. Seriously, like 30 years minimum. Seriously, this is a big deal. So we will see if they get. We'll see how far they go. It'll be fun. Fellas, this has been a dream. I want to thank you for taking the time to break this all down with me tonight. John, you do a great job. Ron, you're an exemplary at what you do as well. Please enjoy the season. It'll be fun. And thanks again. Have a great evening, everybody.
All right, take it easy, fellas.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Actually, one quick question, Dave, before I hang up.
Okay.
Is there going to be some sort of Tyler's Investments or something of that nature again this year? I don't know if we should call it Tyler's Investments because a chicken throwing darts could have done better than him last season.
You might as well get this idea to take over for him.
Oh, that's good. That's funny. That really is. That's kind of hilarious. I haven't figured that out yet, to be honest, guys. We do want to do. I would like to do like a Checkers Investments too, though. Definitely, we'll definitely do a Checkers Investments, sort of a mini revival of the football pick'em. You know, would you be up for that? Like, would you like to spearhead that and like kind of do some picks and stuff like that? Get the gang back together.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to name it after me. You could call it like Dick Cow's Weekly Selection something or another. I mean, it doesn't have to be named
Right.
after myself. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun doing that. You know, a couple picks a week with, I think we had Andy on there and the Boatman, so that was cool. So hopefully we can kind of do something similar this season.
That's I'll come up with a name for it. I haven't figured out the name either. So let's do that. And Chicken could pick the picks. Oh man, how right you were. But that was all right. Well, I guess we have maybe just one quick thing since we're up against the clock. I didn't realize what time it was. But any other things you're looking forward to for college football season? We'll start with Ron. Like, what else are you looking forward to for this year before we sign off tonight?
Just as a local story, I guess I'm looking forward to seeing how Rutgers does in their first season in the Big Ten. I think it's going to be a disaster, but it should be a fun time on the board. I'll probably get out there for a game. I think I'm going to get out there for the game against Wisconsin. But it's definitely going to be cool to see or to have the option to go, a half an hour down the road and go see a Michigan or a Wisconsin or Ohio State play at Rutgers. So that's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. And to John, what among other things are you looking forward to this college football season?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything really else to add. Certainly excited for a new era here at UConn. I know no one really cares. We're kind of slided back into irrelevance, but hopefully our new coach can kind of bring us back up to, we'll be winning 7 or 8 games a year and, at least being a respectable team. So, like I said, I'll be going to the games again this year, so I always have a good time doing that. And other than that, I mean, I just can't wait to start watching the games and, debating about who to be in the playoff. I think it's going to be a fascinating season, and I can't wait to watch the games and get going in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great time, guys. So, again, my thanks. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy all the games, and good luck with all your predictions. We'll catch you down the road. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Dave. Talk to you later.
Thanks, guys.
All right, fellas. Take care. That's Ron in New Jersey and John in Connecticut, and that does it for our college preview tonight. We don't have Kevin on the Cape on the line. We did briefly, but I think he's off. So I think in these final 12 minutes, I could wing it and see if I can get him on to talk for about 5 minutes, but I think we'll probably just sign off tonight. But this truly has been a lot of fun to do. We'll just take one quick break here on the program. Oh, shoot. Wait a minute. I can't do that. I used to be able to play like music during the breaks in order to bridge gaps between when I take a break and when I come back, but the problem with that lately is that YouTube is now flagging all the songs I play as copyright infringement, which is fair because it is, but I would have to come up with something else to play in order to do this break. I'll just do instead of this whole awkwardness, why don't we just go ahead and sign off tonight? It's been a lot of fun, everybody. John in Connecticut, Ron in New Jersey, everybody. Really good time. I hope that everybody else here enjoyed it. We will resume our normal activities with the rest of with our other shows, but this has certainly been a lot of fun. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. There might be a trick up our sleeve or two as we go along from this week to next. Stay tuned. Keep abreast of all updates on the DitCow Twitter page at DitCow. Until then, we'll see you next time.
So you wanna believe it, but